Hey dudes, welcome back to another episode of our Rhomas Men's Team podcast. You are about to listen to one of our prior team meetings. If you ever want to join one of our live sessions that we have every Monday and Friday, head over to rhomas.com. That's RHOMAS.com and put your email in and we will send you a live link every time we record. We generally record on Mondays and Fridays. So if you ever want to be on the actual podcast, like we bring men up all the time to talk about their goals, talk about their obstacles, etc., head over to rhomas.com. And then also, if you want to help support the channel grow and also have access to exclusive content, book reviews, extra whiteboard sessions, etc., and some coaching sessions, head over to patreon.com and support us. We would love it. But if not, no biggie. We'll see you on the live sessions. Later, dudes. Enjoy this podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Wes and Matt here. What's up, dude?
And Matt. Chilling, man. I told you, I just finished working out. I have did I tell you what I'm using right now? That's like one workout app. I think it's called Shred. And
it's
not bad. It's one of those apps like, oh, cool, free workout app, and you download it, and it becomes immediately apparent that you need the premium version.
Right.
It's $99 for the year. And I was like, it was during like the quarantine. I couldn't go anywhere. I was like, I need like an external like program, so I can keep track of stuff. Dude, I love it. I think I'm going to keep it. It's pretty cool.
Really? What kind of workouts?
They'll do anything really. It's like right now I've been using it just for like the ones that are like just you, like the body weight ones, but they have like cardio, body weight, ones for like equipment, lifting. They have pretty much programs for everything.
Oh, nice.
It's not bad. I've actually liked it. And I've noticed they slowly creep it up on you. So like now I'm doing the circuits and I'm like, dude, this is like, but it's like, I feel like it's kind of perfect. It's just out of my comfort zone, but it's not impossible. So it's been pretty cool.
That sounds great. And then are you mirroring the person doing it, or are they just giving you a list of exercises to do?
So it's a list of exercises that one by one is like, all right, they'll say like, do like a walkout push up, and then they'll give you a video. You can click, watch it, and then you can do it. So for every exercise, you can watch during the rest period, watch how they do it, and then do it.
Okay.
So, not bad.
But there is one that I've just tested out just to mix it up a little bit. What is it called? It's called Nike Training Club, NTC. And they're giving it the premium version for free for a while. I think they still probably are. But what I do like about that one is that you're mirroring the person. Which I think is a big difference. So like rather than just reading it and then watching like a tutorial, because I've used apps like that before too. This is actually, there's no reading, nothing. It's just like, hey, the 15-minute workout starts in 5 seconds, and then you just mirror that person.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it takes out the cerebral component to it, because each little piece of friction that you add represents that much more of a barrier to not execute the thing versus like, hey man, I've got 15 minutes. I actually want to get working out done in 15 minutes. And dude, it's legit. It is like
cool.
I did it for 15 minutes before and my legs were on fire the next day.
And you're just following along basically a video of a guy?
Yep.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
That is nice. This does give you the wiggle room of like, they give you the rest period. At first too, like I'd get a rest period. I'm like, I'm going upstairs. I get 30 seconds. Like I need to get some water. And then your phone will continuously be like, ding, come on, ding, come on, ding, come on.
Right. Nice.
Funny. I do like that. I like both. I like both ideas where you're just doing it. You're there. Cause these ones are like, you can pick 20-minute workouts, 40-minute workouts, 60-minute workouts. So I picked 20 minutes, and I've noticed they're creeping up to like 27. I'm like, yeah, I see what you guys are up to. So, pretty cool.
Nice, man. How's the diet going?
Good, dude. That was another thing, man. I've been really into my toward and away system. So it's like, that's for diets. That's been the most like helpful thing. Like everything I'm about to eat, I'm like, is this towards or away? And I'm like, that's away. And it's
awesome.
Funny because it's that combined with actually like tracking, which you do. And it's like, I actually was thinking about this the other day of like boiling down my resistance to tracking and like logging the stuff I'm eating. Because easy, I can be, I could be like, I have a kid. You don't understand. Like, you just don't have time to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I caught my brain calculating some of those. Like, you just don't understand. You can't calculate your food when you're having kids. It's just impossible. And I'm like, well, she's in this little thing. She seems occupied. Like I put her a little play thing. She kind of like stands and like hits stuff.
Yeah.
Like I can totally do this while like she's completely fine. So it is funny how you start being like, I can't. So I'm making up excuses, and I try to really boil it down. Like what is it that is making me feel like this is such a humongous burden? Because it really isn't hard. It's not a physically hard thing to do. I just
Nope.
pull my phone out and like, it takes a couple seconds and it stops me from doing what I'm about to do.
Yep.
Dude, I boiled it down. It's more of like a toddlerish like brattiness. I feel like I've really kind of like meditated and thought about it. Like in the moment, I felt the resistance and I was like, all right, well, what exactly? It's giving me all these like, excuses and reasons that I could, jump on and just jump with. I'm like, no, I don't think that's it. And it just really at the root of it, it's just like, I don't want to. That's it.
Right.
That's all. It's just me being like, I don't feel like it.
Right.
It's so funny. And I'm like, well, okay, that's not a good reason. That's not a good reason.
Oh yeah. No, I totally get it, man.
But
So how have the results been going for you?
I'm still at like one. So I lost, what was I like? I was about 192 and I'm like 190. I'm 188 now.
Oh, nice.
And it's funny
And then,
too. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the funny thing is like, I'm like, now that I have a limiter, so like I see, I'm like, oh man, I only have like 400, 500 calories left for the day. And it's like, I could just not eat at all. And I check the thing and, it tells you like, if you ate like this every day, you would weigh, 183 pounds, whatever.
Right.
But it's funny knowing that like the little snacks and stuff I would eat before bed. And these, all the other stuff I would have been eating, like all the other times I would have been eating. It's like, dude, it kind of makes you confront the reality of like, I would have been like, I eat healthy. And technically I do, but it's like I was over consuming calories like that. It was just that simple.
Oh yeah.
Like,
well, I
big
think
time.
that's one of the main kind of secrets is there's different ways of getting to caloric surplus or deficit. And people get really, crazy about those ways. Like, oh, I do keto or I do this and this is the right way. This is the wrong way. But what I have found is that basically they're just different avenues to get to whether or not you're over or under your calories. I mean, there are some like rare exceptions, like a little bit of bandwidth there, like whether or not you time your meals in the beginning of the day relative to like before you go to bed. There is some evidence there from medical journals, but it's small. It is so small that let's just say for practical purposes, there are several ways to get to, if not many ways to get to either you're consuming more energy than you're using, or you're consuming less energy than you're using. The equation's pretty simple.
Yeah.
So whatever makes you compliant with that, whatever plan makes you most compliant with and congruent with that reality, then do that.
Yeah, that's true. And there's, like I said, there's room to optimize within that kind of window of like, are you meeting like you said, you can meet that with like pizza and popcorn and technically you would lose weight, but it's like, you still are kind of trashing your system. So yeah, it really is. And I feel like I've done a lot of the crazy diets where it's like paleo, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But really it's like, so I can eat 5,000 calories a day of sweet potatoes. Perfect. And it's like, I'll just eat that. So yeah, that really is tracking. And I was so against that for so long of being like, it can't all be that simple. There's no way. It's just about the calories. And it's like, yeah, turns out to be the case. Because as soon as I cut them, it was like pretty instantaneous. I lost like, 3 pounds and it was like, oh, cool.
Oh no, it works. I mean, there's a great video on nutritionfacts.org where it outlines, I think we talked about this, the guy who fasted for, I think it was a little more than a year. He didn't eat anything. He just took vitamin supplements. This is documented. Like everybody can Google this. And that's the proof right there. So everybody who says that they can't lose weight, right? That it doesn't matter what they eat. No, like storing extra body fat is a function of having calories in your body. That's what it's a function of. And I don't say that now, yes, some people have slower metabolism than others. That's clear. I totally understand that. But that is not the same thing as saying, oh, I can't lose weight.
For sure.
That is just medically and scientifically false. It is false. There is no evidence to prove that.
Like there's no, because I've heard before, like, well, I have like a bad thyroid and I have like, I have a condition where it's
you need calories. Like at the end of the day, now if somebody can send me something that proves that wrong, and that's not written by some dude on the internet, right? This like medical journals proving this. At the end of the day, your body spends calories every single day. Typically around, let's just say 100-ish calories per hour, just if you don't eat. If you don't do anything, if you're just sitting there breathing, it's about 100 calories per hour, just in roughly speaking. Well, your body needs energy to make its heart beat. Your body needs energy to think. Your body needs energy to speak, to breathe, etc. That costs energy. The only way that you can store body fat, right, is consuming more energy than your body's naturally burning. That's it. Right. Like, but I think what a lot of people want to do is they want those excuses. You want to hear good news about your bad habits. It's way easier to say, well, I just can't obtain that. Right.
Yeah.
Because now you have an out. And again, I'm not saying this to be a jerk to people, but it's like, I need to hear this stuff too in certain domains. It's like, hey, it's not the thing. It's not this external thing that you can't control. It's like, no, it actually is in your control. You're just not that good at it right now.
Yeah.
But if you keep on running away from that fact and never improve yourself, then how are you actually going to get the results? Oh no, it's just way easier to say it's the government.
Yeah. Or it's like, wait till you get to 40, man. You'll see how it is. And it's like,
dude, the amount of times that I've heard that, it was so funny. So we were in Hawaii. We were in Hawaii relatively recently for a business, and we were sitting down at a big table, and I was with a bunch of older guys. And dude, the amount of times that I've heard this is just unreal. But this guy was saying, he's like, oh man, he's like, when I was your age, I had a 6-pack too. He's like, enjoy it while it lasts, that sort of thing. And I've heard that at least 50 times in my life, at least a derivative of that. And the guy next to him was this kind of like lifelong friend. It was perfect. It was just the perfect response. He's like, Robin, you've never, ever, ever had a 6-pack. I've known you since you were a teenager. Never once did you have a where you fit, right? So yeah, that is a very common thing. We've been told that. I remember in 8th grade, we were told by our teacher, oh, you guys think you're smart and we'll just wait till you get to high school. Right. And then I had high school teachers say the same. Just wait till you get to college. It's always just like, just wait until. It's like, no, that's you making excuses for your younger self and for your current self as to why you don't have the results in life that you want. So you want to push it off on other people. Say, oh, wait till you're 40. Yeah. That's when you'll really pack on the pounds. Like, really? Because I go to the gym and I see a whole bunch of 60-year-olds that are in shape out here in Southern California.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. It's like, I mean, there is some truth to that. Like I used to be able to, drink like almost a bottle of Captain Morgan when I was 18 years old and like wake up and play basketball. Like, sure. Of course you lose some stuff, but that's even more reason why you need to take care of yourself. There's not like, oh, well, wait to see. I was like thinking about that today. It's like, it's not even so much about like, I mean, it's really like you kind of owe it to yourself to continuously use your body and basically shore your body up against, the erosion of time that happens otherwise. Like it's that way by the time you're set, it's like, do you want to be 70 and like, and again, obviously there's medical things that can pop up, but still there's no downside to working out. So it's like, do you want to increase the chance of ending up in like a chair or slumped over or like completely physically incapacitated? Or do you want to, take some agency against that and try to end your life like basically on your feet, moving around as much as possible? And of course, your back's going to hurt, your joints are going to start to go. Dude, I was researching, doing like the psych stuff. They were talking about pain levels and functionality. And they were, this is a one study, but they were saying the relation between pain and functionality has little to do with the actual physical injury, as weird as it sounds, and more to do with the person's relation to their pain and how much they kind of like think about it, obsess about it, blah, blah, blah. Again, if your leg's cut off, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
But that's it. Like, if you feel my leg's cut off, no, you don't have a leg. But it's like, chronic back pain. Like there's people that they'll look at like a slip disc and like, this guy's out buzzing around doing his thing. This person's out, and they've boiled it down to the way people relate to their pain. That whole thing of being like, is like you were talking about before, the second dart is like, yeah, you have a slip disc, but like obsessing over that slip disc is another thing you don't have to do. And it's like, oh, fuck you, man. It's like, hey, look, I've had back pain. It sucks. But it's like, I laid in bed for a while. It got worse and worse. And I just started going out and doing stuff, and it actually did help. So, it's pretty weird.
Did you read that? There's a book on that. There's an entire book on back pain. It's one of the most popular books on back pain on Amazon. And it goes through exactly that.
Really?
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
It's an entire book going through exactly that. And this guy created this whole system, and it was about the mental side of pain. I do think he takes it a little too far, almost too far, to the point where it's like, hey, but yeah, if I do have a physical injury, I should probably try to correct it, right, to a certain degree. I almost got the impression from the book that it was like, oh, well, that's just completely irrelevant. And I'm probably wrong in my interpretation, but that's what I walked away with. It's like, okay, I think he went a little too far on the other end of the spectrum. But certainly, absolutely, there's a mental component, like you said, that reference. What was that book? Buddha's Brain?
Buddha's Brain, yeah.
Yeah, Buddha's Brain. It talks about darts, and it says the first dart is the actual thing. So in this case, it's the actual injury. But then the second dart you mentally throw at yourself is the thinking about the first dart. So all of a sudden you add this extra anxiety. So it is certainly relevant that you work yourself up into a frenzy. So no, I completely agree with that. But dude, I have to say, so we had a client come in here, a new client come in, and it was a husband and wife, and dude, I think she was 64 years old. If you would have seen her from the back, she looked like she was 17, like moved like she was 17. So I was talking to her.
Can we say 18, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude. That throws me off. Especially I've seen that accompanied with like younger clothing where I'm like there, I saw a lady at the train.
Called California, bro.
Yeah, dude.
Dude, it messes you up. It messes you up.
It's like a Goosebumps book, dude. You look and they're like, whoa, what the? You're like 70. Yeah, it's pretty wild, man.
All the time. So I asked her, I said, like, what do you do? She's a Pilates instructor.
She was just like, I'm 17. I have Benjamin Button disease. Really? So she's been doing Pilates her whole life?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know about her whole life, but consistently for a long time. So, so I've noticed two things: yoga and Pilates. Right? If you don't mind me saying, your mom.
Yep.
Right? Like your mom has been doing yoga for how long? Decades?
Yes.
I mean, so, and she, like, I don't know how old she, and I haven't seen her in a long time.
She's like 60 something.
Yeah, but I mean, she does not move like a 60-year-old.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I've noticed that very much with yoga people who do yoga and people who do Pilates. I have not done Pilates yet. I've done a decent amount of yoga, and it's a game changer, dude. It is absolutely. I know another guy, one of my mentors, unfortunately passed away, but he was 90. I think he passed away when he was like 99. But dude, when he was 94, 95 years old, he was still getting on roofs and fixing roofs. What? Just like, oh, dude, like when you looked at this guy move, it was incredible. Yeah, I don't know any 90-some-year-olds that are literally climbing up multiple stories of ladders. It was insane. And his whole secret was, well, he had two secrets. His first secret was yoga every single day. Mm-hmm. And then his other secret was like, Wes, let me tell you what I do. Every time I get sick, I take a bottle of whiskey, I go in my room, and I watch TV for 3 days.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. So such an East Coast old dude.
That's so funny. But I mean, there is something too, being like, I'm sick, I'm therefore cutting off, imagine that, like all the just being able to give yourself time like that. Like, I'm sick, right. I'm not going to power through, the bottle of whiskey, I don't know. But yeah. That's pretty funny. Yoga every day. And, how big of a bottle is he talking to?
Oh, like I don't know. Like I think he said what is it, Jack Daniels? Is that whiskey? I'm pretty sure that's what he was. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Good for him. That's awesome.
But yoga, man.
Well, if anything, it's just testament to the power of doing yoga every day.
Oh yeah.
I've been splitting my time. I love doing jiu-jitsu. I was doing it for a while. It almost starts to like suck you in where you're like, I'm going to start competing in this. And I did yoga, and I like yoga a lot too, but it's like, if I can only do one right now, at least, like I can only do one.
Right.
And jiu-jitsu is cool, but it tears you up, man. It shreds up. To me, I feel like it's like the injuries are pretty constant. And yoga just, is like the opposite. It makes you feel better and better and better and better.
Yeah. Have you done Pilates?
I did Pilates. I did one Pilates class. I didn't like it that much. I felt like it was just more of like a mechanized yoga. I'm like, this is yoga. We're just calling it different things and not doing it as fluidly. But
Did you do it on the floor or the reformer?
Floor. That was the thing. I did it on a floor. So I did it on a floor, and it was like, I think the class is more so for older people, like senior citizens level. So it was just kind of weird. I was just like, nah.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it only because I've heard now enough from people. I've only done one class, and it was a lot of core, but I believe the whole premise is really alignment of the spine and making sure the spine is super strong. And yoga kind of hits on that too. But I think that's I think for Pilates, that is the sole focus. I could be completely wrong. At least that's what I was talking to this instructor, and that's what she was telling me. She said all of your energy comes from the spine. And I think it did get a little too mystical. Like she started getting into that sort of world. Mm-hmm. However, the fundamentals that she was saying were spot on to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, you get into chiropractic stuff, and there's a lot of people who hate chiropractors, but they're just like, well, just make sure your spine's straight and you're sitting up and you have good posture and stuff. I've never been sold on some crazy mystical premise by a chiropractor. They've always been like, how is your posture? I'm like, yep. Poor. And they're like, okay, well, stop doing. People are like, oh, they're full. They're witch doctors. And it's like, the guy who told me to sit up straight. Like, I guess, man, I don't know.
Well, dude, simple. The thing is I think chiropractors get a bad name because I think the origin of chiropractic was a little sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like it wasn't, that's from my brief research. I think that was the reason that people are a little sketchy of it, and probably for some other reasons. But dude, I know enough people going to chiropractors that swear by it, and yes, sure, maybe that's placebo, but placebo has its own benefits too, And but I do think it's at a kind of it's now at, I would say, enough volume for me to think that it's plausible that it's not placebo.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually something going on. I mean, my partner Dave, he said that he was golfing and he did something when he was swinging and he literally could not stand up straight. He was like, I was almost close to a 90-degree angle, and I went to a chiropractor and I walked out standing up straight, pain free.
Yep. Have you ever been to a chiropractor?
What'd you say?
Ever been?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had back. I picked up a 12-pound bag of ice one time, and my back was like really hurting me. And I picked up a bag of ice, and like just like out of like a movie, I was like, oh, and like I could stand up, but it was just I was in like severe back pain. Yeah, it took like 2 sessions, and I was like, oh wow, it's pretty unbelievable. But the thing they say is like, look, we adjusted your spine. It's up to you now to do the exercises and strengthen your your core and your all the tissues in your spinal cord to like keep it where it needs to be, because once you kind of like slack and let things go, your spine can just drift like, half a millimeter and touch a nerve. And it's like,
right,
we can push it back for you, but if you don't make the adjustments yourself, good luck.
Right. Well, I can say that I've been to physical therapy for my back. Actually, the funniest thing, so physical therapy, I talked to doctors who recommend I get surgery, and it's weird how quickly they recommend getting surgery for your spine.
Mm-hmm.
So this speaks to incentivizing. When you give humans incentive to say something, then they will. Literally I went to physical therapy and I went to my primary care physician to talk about, how can I fix it? And then I went to a chiropractor, and they all three had their own different solutions. Funny enough, the only thing that cured it was yoga. Interesting. And none of them said to do that. But I can tell you that when I've gone to chiropractors, they did way more in terms of diagnostic prep than the physical therapist or my primary care physician. Like when I've been to several chiropractors, and I don't necessarily swear by them, but for sure, every single time, like they measured out, they took an x-ray, saw my spine, see if it was straight or not. They took measurements of my shoulders to see if everything was even, looked at my hips. My primary care physician never did that. My physical therapist never did that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, I don't know, if I were to do it as an analytical person, that's what I would look at first. Like, okay, if something's off, it might be systemic somewhere, right? The foundation might be off. Your hips might be, adjusted in a certain way. Why not look there? And my physical therapist and primary care physician never did it once. And I've been to a handful of each.
Yeah, when I first had the back pain, I forgot about this until now. My primary care physician called me and was like, "We looked at your X-rays. You have scoliosis." And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "Yeah." And then I was like, I called. I think I had. No. Then I went to a chiropractor. Being like, I don't think I have scoliosis. And they're like, no, you don't. What are they? And I called them back, and they're like, oh yeah, sorry about that. We were wrong. You don't have scoliosis. And I was like, you guys didn't think to call me back and tell me this? I had to call you. Yeah, that was really. I forgot all about that. Yeah, they're like, you have scoliosis. The guy had like a real heavy accent too. So he's like, you have scoliosis, and I was like, what? Are you sure? And he's like, yes. I was like, what do you want to do? They're like, you can do surgery. And I was like, okay. Let me go get another opinion on this real quick.
Man.
Dude, imagine if I had just been like, well, that's what, the die has been
my lot in life.
I got to go get surgery now. Yeah, man. It's pretty, and it is the funny thing too. I talked to the chiropractor I just went to recently because I was my hands were becoming numb. I think it's from I just had a kid. I was constantly holding a kid. I'm doing like a thing with one part of my body constantly. I think it threw me off a little bit. And I've been sitting a lot more than I usually do. So I started having back pain all the way down to like a tingly, numb feeling in my hand.
Oh yeah.
Did stuff. It went away. I started working out more too, which I think helps. But I was asking him about that. I'm like, why do chiropractors get such a bad rap? And he was like, well, there's some of them who are kind of charlatans who sell all kinds of crazy stuff. But he goes, but if you look it up, and he's like, this is kind of public record. The American Medical Association led like a campaign against chiropractors.
Right.
I think internal physicians, I forget who the other ones were, but they led a campaign against chiropractors, I think in the 50s, 60s, and 70s that resulted in lawsuits from them, like basically publishing like junk science and targeting chiropractic as a movement and trying to slander it. They got caught. The American Medical Association got caught doing that, maligning a couple of chiropractors, and the chiropractor sued and won. He's like, you can look it up. It's public information.
Oh, interesting.
Pretty crazy. Yeah, pretty nuts. And I am a big, it doesn't take much to blow me down the conspiracy road. And I was like, say it isn't so. Say it isn't so. But yes, that was, pretty cool.
Just like sitting there. Oh man, I can't
Oh
wait for
yeah. I was like, oh man, thank you. What else is going on, dude?
Well, I wanted to chat with you about relationship stuff because I think you and I have followed very, very similar paths, and then we have each kind of reached a fork in the road. You went off and did something way cooler than I've done, which is you got married and had a baby and all that stuff, and I'm still playing the wild young stallion game. And but I think it's good to have that dialogue because I think in the absence, from what I have seen, in the absence of such a strong religious infrastructure, like we used to have a very strong religious infrastructure in the United States, and that created, I think, a lot of value system that basically all of your peers had, right? So you got to operate under the same moral code, and that helps make things a lot more efficient. But now, because, at least in my opinion, now because we don't have as much of that strong religious infrastructure, at least with my peers, I would assume your peers are the same. Mm-hmm. There are these crossroads, there's these weird little intersections, and I think relationships is one of them, where you meet somebody and maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your girlfriend, maybe it's et cetera, whatever, somebody you're dating, and all of a sudden you don't have the same rule book, and it's because you didn't come from the same relationship school. So I just wanted to touch base on that stuff and see, what has your experience been like, in terms of relationships with your wife, et cetera, and what hot topics are in that category, because I do think that's one of the things we haven't explored yet. And obviously we could take 35 podcasts to really explore this thoroughly, but I think we should kick it off.
Yeah, man. No, I agree. So I've mostly learned through horrible mistakes, which is like, that's the only place I've really learned from. Like the evolution of my view of, let's say, like romantic partnership started very much of like a horny young dude being like, I'm getting ass. And that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. And it's like, I can't rail against, I mean, again, I think it's, there's elements of that are kind of natural, being like younger or whatever. But when you don't get out of that, like by the time you're, hopefully mid 20s, early 20s, you can start kind of looking at it differently, where it's like, the time machine thing, if I had a time machine, what I would do is, it's like, if you, especially for guys, it's like any girl can make you come, like, not to be disgusting, but it's like, if you're out here like, oh, I'm trying to get ass, any mission accomplished. It's like, stop, jerking yourself silly on porn, wait 5 days. Look, any girl can pretty much blow on you and you'll be like, oh, Jesus Christ. But so it's like, but that seems to be, and I hate to get so, into that, but it's like that to me when I was younger drove a lot of my relationships, where I'm like, oh, she's hot. And I would just be like, hey, and I'm like, how can I project this thing that this lady would somehow, which I still can't wrap my head around, be like, yeah, I'll let this guy come back to my house and have sex with. It's insane. But it's like, but there's a whole other struggle and, thing on their part of like, what they're looking for. But yeah, so it was like, I like built relationships off of that, of just being like, oh, she's hot. Oh. And it's like, dude, the nuance, what it really should be is like, what are you, and I think too, that's kind of not like a protective mechanism, but like a thing, like, say you just have no idea what you're doing in life. I'm not even thinking about it. It's too hard to think about. I can go, have like a romantic fling, and it'll take my mind off of all of that stuff for at least a couple weeks, where I can feel super fulfilled just by making some kind of physical contact. But like that physical contact really should be a thing that harbors a humongous part of your life. That's like, having a family, raising kids. And if people are like, oh, I don't want to have a family, it's like, all right, go do you. But I always did. So it was like, to try to build a family off of that kind of like super shallow, like, oh, she's hot thing. It's a fucking nightmare, man.
We need to talk about that. We need to talk about that.
There's all those other dimensions. And it's like, at first when you're younger, you just look at again, it's just like, man, that chick's hot. But as you get older, it's like, it's like they like hammer this stuff in stories. It's like, what people should really pay attention to is like, how does that person make you feel? Forget about like, trying to, be like, oh, like all over her stomach, but it's like, how does that person make you feel mentally? And it's like, if you really look for someone who makes you feel good mentally, and it's like the other stuff follows, man. But instead it's just like, I would always like be with people I like got along with and be like, I don't know, that spark's not there, but I think it's because I was just so hung up on being like, oh my God, oh, she's hotter than her. Oh, but she's
Yep.
super hot. She have C's. Oh, cool. Like, dude, embarrassingly late in life that I like operate on this kind of thing. And it's like, it's just, you can't, man. It's like the thing that I've came to, and I'll stop rambling, but it's like, is figure out before you even go even approaching other people, like you should really try to figure out what you're trying to do with yourself. You know, if you're 17, 18, 19, whatever, I get it. But it's like, by the time you're like 24, 25, you're working, you're doing stuff, you really need to spend time and figure out what you actually want. So that then when you're talking to people and you're dating, you should be using that time instead of trying to pointlessly get laid to like find someone whose life aligns in a way with yours that is like mutually beneficial, if that makes sense.
100%.
You know, and it's like, you know, you want the spark and the romance, try to find as much of that as you can, but it's like a lot of us. And I think, dude, look into the history of like romantic thought and literature, because it's a new thing of just being like my damsel or whatever. And it's like, you are the one for me. And that's a new thing. And a lot of it comes from romantic literature. It's kind of a romantic love is a new thing. And, you know, not saying we should be like, you know, arranged marriages or like trying to secure like acres of land through like girlfriends and stuff. But it's like,
Right.
yeah, we could ditch a lot of the fantasy vampire soap opera bullshit and, you know, just be like, what am I trying to do in life? What is this person trying to do in life? How do they conduct themselves? How do I conduct myself? Could this work? As, you know, of course, you know, you look at the marriage record. It's a 50-50 shot if it's going to fail or not. And I think that could be greatly improved if the, you know, the cultural milieu around dating kind of changed a little bit. So that's
100%, man. No, we can dissect so much of that. And I think one of the cornerstones that you're picking out, which is spot on, is, and Joe Rogan and Brett Weinstein, I never remember if it's Brett Weinstein or Weinstein. Is he Steen? Weinstein? So Brett Weinstein, who's an evolutionary biologist, I believe. So he's a scientist in that category. This has been documented that there is a difference between, at least from what he said, there's hot and there's beautiful. And he said this is actually grounded in science. And so I just had a conversation with my girlfriend recently, and we were out at a lake, and there was like this big party scene. And I did not know it was a scene. I despise that scene. And it was a bunch of girls running around, you know, first of all, it was fun when we're out on the boat and we're doing, you know, water skiing and all that stuff. But then when you pull back into wherever you park boats, I don't know the boating terminology, because I think owning a boat is just completely absurd.
The dock.
However, dude, we rented a boat for $500, and I asked the guy driving the boat, he was part of our friend group, and it's like, how much does this boat cost? And he said about 50 to 60 grand. Plus, you know, plus maintenance, plus fuel, all that stuff. It's like, well, we just rented one for $500. We split the cost with a group, and then we hand it back, right? And, you know, so unless you're boating every other day, right? It's just, I don't get the expense, but
it's like $400 just to get. I've always heard that boats are complete money pits. Like just to like go out for the day, it's a couple $100 of gas. From what I've heard, you know, if a big boat, just that, and then dude, when something breaks, which they always do, it's like. I've heard from multiple. My dad was into boats for a while, and he was like, dude, it's such a money pit. Him and his brothers would split it, and they were like, you know, he was like, I'm cool on that, man.
Dude, and the time, I had a buddy take me out on a boat out here. We had a great time, and then we had to clean it afterwards for like an hour.
Yeah, dude,
for an hour. That's after you've been on the water for 6 hours. And like, this is not like, I don't even want to do that part, let alone pay all the fuel and all the maintenance. And then you have to like have it out of the water. You have to take, like, a boat's not supposed to be in water, or you have to leave it out of the water.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
For the most part.
You can leave them in like seasonally, but I guess around there it's boat season all day, every day. But like around here, it's like you can have a boat, you put it in for the season, you pay it your dock slip, you know, for at a marina or whatever you do, and then the wintertime you take it out, you store it somewhere, you put it back in the water. I used to get dragged into fishing, man, and I would just sit out there and just be bopping and rocking. I'm like, I would just look at the little dot of land, like, can I please go back to that? And again, that's just me. We're very similar in that because I'm not a fan of boats, and I'll go on them. Like you said, I'll go on one. Someone's like, yo, give me 50 grand. I'm like, I'm cool, bro. I'm good on that. I'll stay on the land.
Yeah. So yeah, just for the record, fishing, all-time worst activity you could ever do in life. I know I'm going to offend a lot of people. I'm so sorry, but I respect it. You know, my best friend growing up loved fishing, so I get it. But for me, I'm the same way, dude. I'm like, what are we like? I'm just constantly going like this for 8 hours, you know. It's, you know, and then you put a hook through this thing, and they're like, oh, no, we're going to throw it back. It's like, what? Like, oh, they don't feel pain. Oh, they don't feel pain. Is that why they're freaking out right now? Feels good to them.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Some people love it, man. I just never caught the bug. My whole family would like doing it. I would go with them, and I'm like, I must be an alien. I don't like this. This sucks. So yeah. So hey,
dude, I can't do it, man. Can't do it.
Brings you joy, do it. But
yeah, to each his own. So we're at this lake, and I'm telling my girlfriend, I'm just like, look at all these girls, and we've got little kids with us and all this, and these girls are running around. Thongs are basically, bathing suits are basically thongs now. Like 60% of women out here are wearing thongs as bathing suits, and then they have stickers on their nipples. Like that's what they're wearing, right?
What?
Like that's it. And oh yeah. I mean, not every one of them, but we saw it many times.
That's the new thing. It was butt cheeks last summer. Now they're wearing pasties on their nipples.
Dude, it's crazy. And when I was telling my girlfriend, I said, look, like, and I'm saying this honestly, and I know it seems like I'm just saying this because you're here. I said that's disgusting, and I hate sounding like a nerd, but it's like that to me, it's not disgusting. It's pitiful to me, right? It's that is a female, in my opinion, not understanding that there's a difference between hot and beautiful, like Brett Weinstein is talking about, right? If you go and do that, then you are going to attract a certain type of person that is looking for that. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is, every woman that I've talked to, and I'm sure there are exceptions to this, they're not looking for that. They're not looking for that type of man who just wants to treat them a certain way for a short period of time and then done. But it's like, but that's your hook. You're using that as your hook when really you want a family. Like, again, the girls that I've talked to, they want a family. It's like, how in the world are you going to attract a respectable man when you're running around with pasties on yourself?
Yeah. I mean,
that just doesn't make sense to me. Now, at the same time, I also think that it's like we have to take a step back and really recognize even clothing, and I'm probably going to catch a lot of heat for this one, but like if we look from an evolutionary standpoint, clothing, for number one, men are attracted to physicality, like the physical body. There's evolutionary biological reasons for that. And now, especially because America and like we're very progressive, the clothing that is now acceptable for women to wear is a fraction of what it was in the past. Again, societal norms. When you look at like, women walking around and their chest is just hanging out, right? There's clothing now that's like, not only is it like top cleavage, it's just like side cleavage and bottom cleavage. Yep. Now, to each his own, like go and do it. I'm not saying that's a wrong thing to do, but that does yield, if I were to ask 100 men, hey, when you look at that, what goes through your mind? I don't think any of them would say, yeah, that's who I want my life partner to be, because I know that she's got a strong skill set in building a family, right? Not one of them would say that. And I think that's a discussion that really needs to be addressed. It's like, and as men, if we reverse engineer this, like Matt, like you were saying, are you looking for hot, or are you looking for, let's say, strong, beautiful? Like, that I put those in two different categories, again, using Brett Weinstein's terminology. But are you looking for a woman that's just purely physically attractive and who's giving off those signs? Or are you looking for somebody who, yes, you're still physically attracted to, but maybe who's doing it in a more, I don't want to say respectable way, but like, I think you get the point, right? Mm-hmm. In a way that's not trying to bottom feed off of like just these guys who are looking for like purely aesthetics. Does that make sense?
Sure. It's like you're attracting the dudes in Instagram comments who are like, babe, you're so hot, beautiful, babe. Oh my God, babe. It's like, that's who you're trying. And then they'll complain about that. And then they'll complain about being objectified. And it's like, well, I can see your boobs. Like, I don't even have to objectify you. I can literally see your whole boobs. For girls, I think it's kind of like doing that. And it's gotta be hard. And it's got to be difficult because women, I mean, nobody wants to talk about this. They're on a biological clock. So it's like, they got the score, whatever it's called, the shot clock. Shot clock's kind of ticking, in a way, in the early 20s, they're like, yeah. And then like, I'm telling you, chicks hit 26, 27. And it's like that Game of Thrones intro starts playing in their heads and they start being like, all right, what's the plan here? Yep. And it's almost like Game Genie with Sega Genesis. You can plug that thing and it's like, let me show my ass. And it's like, oh, okay, here's a ton of attention. But, if you ever played a game with Game Genie on, you just get bored. You're like, well, what's the point? There's no struggle. There's no challenge. This is kind of stupid. I have all infinite or whatever. Maybe a crazy example, or an analogy, but it's one of those things where it's like, Game Genie. Yeah, it's like you're showing your butt cheeks. Yeah, you got attention. You wanted attention. But like same thing, like guys want to have sex. It's like you can get all the attention, you can get all the sex. if it's not towards a thing other than pleasing yourself or your ego, it just dissipates and steams off. And it's like, do you double down and go harder, or do you start reassessing? Like, let me do something that I personally find more valuable, rather than kind of like trying to appease the gods of society, which are kind of sending me these signals: be hot, young, and show skin. And anyone who tells you otherwise is like a piece of shit, patriarchal, oppressor. And it's like, nah, dude, it's, go do that. But then, don't complain about, the fact that all of your boyfriends are cokeheads or whatever. It's like,
Yep.
that's who you're attracted. Not to say only, but cokeheads are attracted to chicks with like the butts hanging out, but it's like, you're attracting typically if you were to go, like, if someone, say I was dating someone, and someone, if I brought a girl into my house around my parents with butt cheeks hanging out, they would not treat her very well, because they would go, that's a bad sign. And what's the bad sign? Looking for attention, not just attention, the wrong attention that tends to bring bad things.
It's exactly, dude. That is spot on. That is
like
100% spot on.
Yeah, it's like, go ahead, do that, and date dudes with tongue rings. Nothing against dudes with tongue rings, but typically they love MDMA, and do MDMA for a while. Where does that lead you? It's like, I don't know, fucking
right,
closer to doing GHB or whatever, whatever else
right.
the other stuff is. I know a guy who just died from GHB last year.
Oh, really?
It's like a rave drug. Yeah, I mean, it's like it was like a friend of a friend. I would kind of go to I'd like been in the guy's house a couple of times. I was like, they kind of freaked me out, to be honest. But yeah, just on his birthday, did GHB, died. And it was just like, that's, and again, I know people are like, oh my God, relax. But it's like, that's where my brain goes, man. It's like, you start doing that, yeah, let's do this. Yeah. Like the things that I was doing. I mean, you knew me when I was younger. I defied all convention. I opposed all convention. I was like, it's stupid. You don't need any of this. And my 20s were spent learning things the hard way, of being like, there's a ton of validity to these things a lot of these older people are saying to me. And I blew it off, and I ran into multiple walls at 60 miles an hour, and was like, all right, yep. All right. That's a pretty good rule, And it's like, we can move out of like banishing our sons for being gay or our daughters for being lesbians. Like, all right, that's, it's like the pendulum swung away from that. And I think that whole thing of like showing your butt cheeks could be partly, like the trail on that meteor, but it's like, let's not let this pendulum swing too far. Let's take the good with the bad. I don't know. I'm purely rambling, but it's like,
no, dude, here's the thing. I don't think either of us are judging. I'm saying it right now, I'm not judging anybody for doing it, but not recognizing the cause and effect of that, like the sequence of events that happens from that. It's like, hey, if you go and do this, if you go and attract that certain type of attention, here's what it will most likely yield. Doesn't mean it's going to 100% yield that. Maybe you get a respectable man who's got a great career, who has purely great intentions for building a future with you. That is certainly, it is possible. But I'd probably put it in like the 1 out of 10,000 category, right? Typically what you're going to get if you do a certain type of behavior, if you dress a certain type of way and you act a certain type of way, like going to this lake with a thong on and pasties on your chest and like going nuts and like the party girl, like dancing around and all that stuff, that is going to yield a certain result. Now, so the funny thing is, my girlfriend, when I first met her, super, like, what I was so attractive about her was she was wearing a sweater. She looked like a nerd, but she had a gorgeous body, gorgeous face. And so to me, that was like, wow, this is a person who has all of the attributes, but's not trying to attract some sort of trashy attention, right? And I don't mean to say trashy. I should probably change that word. Trying to attract a certain type of attention that's just based off of impulse.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like, and again, I think a lot of guys, I think it'd be foolish to not talk about, or not at least acknowledge. It's like, yeah, that is a part of life. That is, if you're a certain guy of a certain age and you have a certain stature and you can achieve those that, I'm not hating on you, man. I think you and I, Matt, both went through that kind of phase. So, but it's just, that is not the same route, right? As it's not the same person that you want to be with. And I think that conversation just needs to happen, where a group of men and women in all of those categories, like the impulse ones, like, hey, I'm just looking for something short term, just fun, like nothing, just want to live my life for right now, and then I'll make future decisions later, right? Those two categories of men and women, that should be fine. Like, go ahead, go at it, go and do those things. But it's the cross pollination, right? The diagonal cross pollination, where you get a woman who wants a future and wants a stable household and so on, but she's dressing like the category that's the opposite. And then similarly, the guy, right, and men are equally as at fault. Mm-hmm. Like, as men, we have to take responsibility and stop doing dumb shit also.
Yeah.
Right? The amount of times where we just let how common is it where you see a CEO who has everything in the world, beautiful family, 2.5 kids, a dog, and gets paid, $10 million a year. And then he goes and has an affair with the waitress,
Yeah.
at the local Denny's, right? Like, men, we're way more to blame, I think, for a lot of the underlying problems in relationships. But just because you mentioned, the basically lust versus love argument, I think that needs to be addressed. It really needs to be addressed.
Yeah, man. No, it totally does, man. And it's just like, yeah, I could talk about it forever, but it's one of those things where, and most people, like I said, there's some people like, I'm just kind of like, typically too, in those periods of like, I'm just going to have fun. Like, people typically are more conflicted than just being like, I'm in fun mode versus I want some sort of
Mm-hmm.
meaningful human contact mode. You're usually in kind of a little bit of both. Then
You're in a limbo. You're in purgatory.
yeah, you swing one way and go back, and then we're in one that, and the next day we aren't. So yeah, we're way more like kind of, I guess static's the word for that. Like, we're just kind of switching on and off, and we don't really know what we want. But for guys, especially, like, I think I almost got the opposite thing. Like, as a dude, you kind of get sent this message, like, you're not really told to have any sort of sexual constraint. Like, we used to
Mm-hmm.
have that, and it was kind of like, like a virtue. And now it's like, what are you fucking, like, what are you, gay? Like,
Right.
it's like, nah, dude, I'm saving myself. It's like, you're a loser. But now it's like, yeah, dudes never got any sort of like, as a younger guy, I felt like I was getting the mess. My actions kind of, I feel like I could say my actions came from, I was getting a message saying like, go out and just like do you, and like, get as much girls as whatever. Like, there was never any force that was like, dude, cool it, chill out. And like, it's actually pretty cool to have control over your sexual desires.
Yep.
Never got that message when I was younger. And as I'm older, it's like, that to me seems like the move, man. Like, I've seen girls walk, it's like halter top, like up, shirt up to here. Like, you can't see, like, up to here, and like
Yep.
super short shorts. And it's like, when I'm younger, I would have been like, oh my God. But as I get older, I'm like, okay, I've hung out with, enough of women who dress like that to know that, behind the whole, like, oh, this wild tryst and we're having sex lies a need for an infinite amount of attention that becomes so so brutal to try to satisfy, that I see that. And I
You
just,
can't satisfy it.
at this point, I just flinch and I just go like, ugh. Like, I get the
Agreed.
chills, because it's like, yeah, fool me once thing. It's like, okay, like, it's not even, to me, it's not, again, I'm older, obviously, but it's like, God damn it, if I could have known this when I could have saved myself a ton of bullshit of just being like, I'm cool. And a lot of times too, it's the male ego of being like, this chick's into me, awesome. And it's like, well, yeah, you sort of like, you, the person she's fantasized about, or you just, filling the void. But it's like, that was something I had to you just have to swallow. It's like, yeah, you're not that great. Like, you're just not, it's
Right.
like, yeah, you can. And, I don't know. That's something I had to do, of being like, you can kind of try to like justify your ego, your own insecurities. Like, damn, this hot chick wants me. Awesome. Meanwhile, you're getting sucked into this weird female ego game that, like, and nobody talks about the female ego either. Nobody talks about it. It's
Mm-mm.
always the male ego. Oh, the male ego, this, the male ego trying to control and dominate. It's like, have you ever thought about the female ego, how it operates?
No, I haven't. Please go for
Exclusion.
it.
Exclusion. Watch commercials that are geared more towards women. Usually, like, man, you watch the Marines and shit. It's like a dude on a mountain with a sword with lightning, just like, yeah, like doing all this
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Pay attention to commercials that are geared towards women. Typically, they're showing a woman having something and someone else not being either in there or not having that. There was a commercial for a real estate website where they're like buying a house and they're like showing the thing, and like there's a lady with her realtor, they're sitting there doing it, and the girl's like, oh my God, that house is beautiful. And she was like, sorry, it's taken. It was kind of like, yeah, you don't have, you're not in this with us. The female ego works via exclusion. Because,
Interesting.
I'm telling you, man, I've been studying this for a while, because it's like, you never hear about it. It's always the male ego this, the male ego this. Like,
Right.
women have egos, man. It's like, go
Right.
get married. Hear them talk about engagement rings and this and that. It's like, trust me, dude. It's like they have a weird, theirs is more like, if you ever get into the relational aggression, there's
No.
physical aggression. Men show physical aggression more. They have studies on this. This is like not really something people can contest. So men are more likely to be physically aggressive and, and show their aggression in physical ways. Women, knowing that's kind of a losing game for them, where they're going to like try to fight dudes, they don't do that. And they typically don't do
Right.
it to each other. What they do, and this is a problem in school for girls, they show aggression relationally, where like, you'll be in 7th, 8th grade, and they'll just not invite, they'll have a party, set up a social function, and then exclude a girl they don't like or have a problem with from their party.
Oh, dude, I've seen that a million times. I've seen
Exactly.
it a million times.
It's relational aggression. That's a way, they'll have a fun time. They'll be at a party just being like, having fun, taking the pictures. And then, that's what I'm saying. There's a thing going on, man. You could be the guy who shows up being like, oh, sweet, I'm getting pussy. It's like, you don't even know. You're part of a 4D chess game to just like smite some girl who like she has beef with from like 3 years ago, dude. Like, it's like, I'm in amazement, when it comes to that stuff. It's like, dude, women can definitely, when women, want to fuck you up, like they'll do it, dude. They'll fuck you up and they'll stop at nothing in a different subtle way. That again, it's like the school bully who's pushing people down and gets in trouble, but the girl who's not inviting certain people to parties it never gets addressed. And it just, it's like, and it's almost a thing where women are dealing with it, like in these invisible wars that just have no idea about. And it's like, it wreaks fucking havoc. And then throw social media on top of that. And then it's like, maybe I will show my fucking ass, man. She's, they're hanging out with, you're 25 years old. Her boyfriend's a chef for, the NBA or some shit. It's like, I need that too. And, I deserve better too. And dude, I'm telling you, man, social media is like gasoline on that shit.
Dude, well, let's talk about that. What are your thoughts about, I got to imagine, and I've had experience this where dating, girls who again, you're bringing to light, to surface so many of these things. It's like, wow, yeah, we need to have this conversation so that other men going through it can see these and they can judge, they can make decisions for themselves. But so we can start to pick out patterns. I've got to imagine, and I've experienced this, where the women searching for that attention, social media, oh man, that just throws an atomic bomb on that type of personality. What has your experience been with that? What's your perspective?
I mean, there's social media big time. Well, yeah, that's one thing too. Like that's one thing I really like about Brittany. She'll go on and look about stuff, but she doesn't have like a very active social media persona in life that she's constantly like, she barely films stuff. It's not like I've seen men and women who are like, part of their life is almost like their personal reality show that they're filming themselves or like addressing a bunch of people. So I typically take that as a bad sign. If someone feels the need to be like constantly blurred, I mean, there's a blurry line because it might be someone's job or something, whatever. But just spending it becomes a self-obsession. I think personally is kind of unhealthy, and it becomes like this weird fake relationship where you're just kind of like talking to people who are like, oh, it's awesome, are you this or that. I don't think it's a very good thing. And it's like the research also tends to show that having a bunch of like faceless friends and confidants on social media who are just kind of like filling that stuff, it isn't really helping in terms of people's mental health. Like,
No.
So, I think people need those real 3D relationships, but when you enter the dating apps into that too, it's all one connected system. So it's like, you want to talk about like, so you're on the dating apps, the person, you both come from this like virtual, like limitless cybersphere of just like meeting people. Then you hang out and then you have to have a talk. Like, are we going to turn these apps off on our phone? And like, but then like you can turn the apps off, but there's still social media. So they're talking to apps on multiple people. The app's off, but that person still has their Facebook who they went on one date with. Then you're like, well, we're just kind of friends. And you're like, I highly doubt that. And then, it's like, dude, we are fully connected in ways where it's like, I mean, dude, think about this. Like, we don't really know it like this, but like every girl that people say, like now, people who are currently 18, every girl has direct access to all of their ex-boyfriends. Like,
Yep.
live, not even just like, hey, obviously I can call them. Like I can keep an eye on them. There's a thing called pillowing in dating where like, and I think women do this a little more, where like they'll date a guy, but have like close male friends that they kind of throw little feelers out to just in case. And like, that way, if they feel like, oh, if this person's backing off, I'll spend more time with this guy. Cause again, you're the dude, you're like, oh, fuck yeah, my girlfriend's so high. It's like, yeah, she's kind of getting that attention from like 3 or 4 other people. And it could be pretty harmless attention, but it's like, it's a very blurry line. It's one of those things where, again, it comes from like, I feel like a good relationship happens. This is such a bad analogy. And again, I'll catch so much heat, but they say like, you kind of win when you buy the house. It's like you win when you buy the house. Cause it's like, if you want to make an investment, you should do all your due diligence and like kind of win at the purchase rather than kind of, you're talking about, no, I'm not talking about purchasing wives. The thing I'm talking about is like, you should, if you can, before you go into the thing, if you do a lot of due diligence and go into it right, you won't have all of these problems. But it's like, if you just like throw your, if you were just like saw a house and you're like, damn, I could probably make $1 million off of this, and just started hammering away, you're like, oh shit, there's termites. Oh shit, there's this, there's that. And like I said, that's kind of where like, if you can date properly to where like you're actually, there's your sexual interests are part of your life. I'm not saying to like Handmaiden's Tale out or wear a chastity belt, but it's like, that's a part of it. But there's also a ton of other dimensions that will eventually eat away at that, your whole will to feel like a sexual human being if you're fighting and miserable all the time.
Oh, dude. Well, I mean, the social media aspect alone, and men and women, I think, are they're both at fault to this. Um, but I remember I was dating a girl, and she had Snapchat, and that dude, Snapchat, just its very nature, right? I think I signed up for Snapchat, and I don't think I ever used it once, but I understand the premise, which is basically like you can send messages and they're gone, right? Like,
Yeah.
right. So I was dating a
Should just
girl,
be
and
called dick pic.
so so I was dating her and we're sitting together, and I've obviously got huge trust issues because my dad left when I was a kid. So I'd be lying if I didn't say like that leaves a certain amount of like, okay, every man for himself. Like if a dad can leave his own offspring, then a manufactured relationship of an intimate relationship can easily go away too. So I need to work on, I've been working on that consistently. But so we're sitting on the couch together, and she gets a message, and it's, the little Snapchat thing pops up on her phone, and I see it's her boss, right? And then she swipes it up real quick. And this was right? Like, so me, and here where I sit with a relationship is like, look, this is voluntary for both of us. So, and I already have a certain resistance to it because it's like I'm trying to get my family out of poverty and I'm starting to do well, etc. And I could go and marry somebody, and then they could get a message on Snapchat, go and cheat on me, and then we get divorced. But because I'm the primary breadwinner, now I have to pay her and her boyfriend for until she gets married again. Like that's what goes through my head,
True.
right?
Yeah.
And so even, and now just to be clear, the girl who did that, I don't think there was anything involved. I think it was the dumb boss.
Sure.
He's kind of an older, nerdy dude, who had some younger employees, but he knew what he was doing. Right? Certainly knew what he was doing. And that's a whole nother discussion we need to have. It's like dudes who are like going after dudes' girlfriends and wives, like, stop what you're fucking doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, or be a man and come and talk to the person, right? And then you'll find out real quickly that they're not going to be willing to do that. Where it's like, go and do the work yourself to somebody else who's not taking. But anyway, that's another discussion.
Yeah. I hate that shit.
Oh, dude, I have another story of a boss sending puppy dog pictures.
Motherfucker.
Right. And it's like, and then you talk to the girl, it's like, oh, well, he's just being nice. It's like, yeah, it's just being nice. Like, do we have to have the naive conversation? Because if we have to have the naive conversation, it's not worth it, right? Like, so you need to make a decision real quick on whether or not I'm not having that naive discussion anymore. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut those dogs' heads off.
So so she receives the Snapchat message from a boss, and then she swipes up, and that was a reaction. So I basically very calmly said, this could go one of two ways, right? Like, you had your opportunity, right, to show me that message, and you obviously said, why'd you do it? And it freaks women out when I talk like very calm and direct. It's almost it's kind of like in The Godfather when that one guy gives a kiss to his brother or whatever, saying, I know what you did to me, But I think that's the way to handle it. Like, very calmly, not doesn't need to be emotional because, but this is obviously a very large violation. But these social media platforms, it's like, I think what they say in AA, I have a friend going through AA, and I think he said, if you don't want to slip, don't go where it's slippery. Right. So these social media platforms, man, you're right. It's infinite exposure. And at any given time. And the funny thing is what I try to tell my girlfriend is like, look, having guys that are friends, sure, there can be exceptions to the rule, but please, let's understand the underlying dynamics, and also understand that just because it's okay now, like you don't feel anything now, like imagine we get married and we're in a huge fight. Like, you don't know how hard life can get, right? Or a relationship can get. Like, you don't know how low. I'm going to assume that you and I, Matt, are in for some major devastating relationship arguments in the future. That it's just like you're hanging on by a thread, right? And it's just like, and especially as a man, it's like, I think the typical thing is like, I don't need this. Like, I don't need this, right? You're hanging on by a thread, and then she's hanging on by a thread. The last thing you need is to get a Snapchat message from a guy that's just been like a friend, and he's been super nice and buying you lunch, and he's treated you like all this stuff. That's and it's like, hey, you want to go out to lunch? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm having a bummer of a day. Let's just go out to lunch. Like that is the start of making that disaster Armageddon.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, but you're starting those little sequence of steps now. Right. So I personally, I don't know about you, but I think I don't even want to be with somebody like that.
Yeah.
Right. Like and I maybe that's bad. I'll catch a lot of heat for it, but it's just, you're bringing unnecessary risk to the table yes, it might not seem to you like risk right now, but we
Mhm.
also haven't been together for 35 years. None of us know what it's like to be together for 35 years. And you got 2 kids running around,
Mhm.
right? And you just learned you got type 2 diabetes and your uncle just passed away from cancer. Like, there's so many things that can happen as a cocktail effect that you and I and our peer group have no idea what's
Sure.
going to smack us in the face. So try to create as much order and foundation with your relationships as possible, so that way you can go into those battles as strong as possible, because even then you're most likely not going to make it on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I think that's I mean, that's like such a good picture of it. And it's also like, when you're younger, I think we're kind of more so at odds with societal pressure. And it's like, well,
Right.
I have a hard time believing that people who cave to societal pressure can handle the second half of their life, which is coming to grips with their mortality and the mortality of the others around them. So it's like, if you can't maybe act in deference to like the things being beamed out to you by like, all of the news agencies and NBC and, MTV and all that stuff. If you fall to that, it's like, do I want to watch the second act of this when like you're coming to grips with the fact that like you're going to die, or like getting closer and closer? Because typically you probably won't handle that well.
Right.
If you're that weak of mind to like kind of fall to all that stuff. And yeah, man, I mean, that's kind of an aside, but it's like, yeah, I mean, there's also, because it's one of those things too, as a girl to be like, well, we're just friends, and you're a dude, and you're like, well, it's like, well, maybe you're not friends with girls. It's like, yeah, well, it's like, I have girls I'm like cool with, but like, I wouldn't be like, hey, let's go watch a movie at your house and not feel
Right.
like a total fucking weirdo and pervert the entire time.
Right.
Be like, you
Yep.
sit on the couch, I'll sit over here on the floor. It's like, it's just weird, dude. It's like, why? I wouldn't do that. I'd feel the whole time. I'd be like, I don't understand. And it's like, there's one of those things too, like say you're working, like, say I was working, I saw someone there's people I've like interacted with. If I saw out, I'm like, hey, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. We're friends. We're friendly. But yeah, as soon as it's like, hey, it's Saturday night, what are you up to? It's like
Mhm.
kind of weird, man. That's kind of, dude, everyone gave Mike Pence shit. And it's like, Mike Pence is kind of like just funny in general, just like thinking about, but it's like that whole thing when he was like, I won't go out to eat with a younger woman for work
Nope.
stuff without my wife there. And everyone's
Should
like,
not.
oh, you old sexist, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, nobody talks about how much power young women have in terms of like, they can, like you just said, you can have a CEO that speaks 3 languages, does Kung Fu and karate, makes $1 million a year, can be brought to his knees by a 19-year-old.
Does karate.
Yeah, dude, like you could have the guy who's about to storm the casino at Ocean's 11. Just let a girl who's just 19, who does nothing other than just be a 19-year-old girl, can
Yep.
bring that man to his knees and crumble him.
Yep.
And nobody talks about that, how much power they have. And there's Camille Paglia. She was a feminist back in like the bra burning, like, like I think it was slightly after the women voting era of feminism. So it was like kind of like a first wave feminist. And what she's trying to tell women is like, dude, you guys are like totally blowing it in terms of like the power. Women have this like insane sexual power when they're younger, younger meaning like, 22, whatever that age is of like, 19, 18, 20, 22. If you're 40 dating 19-year-olds, I think you're kind of fucking weird. But again, that doesn't
Right.
take away from the biological reality of like,
Right.
it might be super hot. And it's like guys are designed to look for physical traits that, denote fertility, all that shit. But it's like when you're in that age range of like, let's just say 20 to, I don't want to put a cap. So, let's say 27, some 28-year-old girls like, hey, fuck you. It's like, whatever. You know what I mean? As that it just fades from there, to be
Right.
honest. On a certain level,
Sure. Yep.
you're going to say just, and it's obviously not universal, not the case. This is a super hot button issue that like, dude, this is a bad one that people don't want to talk about, don't want to hear about, but it's just to me, it's a reality of like,
Well, and just so everybody knows, this is a men's podcast. Like, and there's a reason for that that we need to be able to talk as men how we think, because out there in the world right now, in my opinion, a lot of us are not allowed to be real men. We're not allowed to say things without being. It's like, no, that's why we're putting a whole bunch of disclaimers. Like, everybody should be respectable and respectful and acknowledge like these little things, these nuances, like you're saying. It's like, hey, I'm using this as an example. But again, this is a men's podcast. So if you're a woman, get off.
get out of here.
Yeah, get out of here. Not invited. E-Man Woman Haters Club.
Unless you could handle me saying younger chicks are hotter than older chicks.
Yeah.
But that's the thing though. It's like, as a woman, it's like you have all this, let's call it like sexual capital as a younger woman. That is, a lot of it can be more looked at towards like, oh, she's hot. That like, kind of like weird. Like Louis C.K. does a funny thing of being like, oh, like younger guys going out and be like, oh, I want to come and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's he has this whole other can of worms that comes with him.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna
it's like,
say that's a bad reference, brother.
but he's a good comedian. But yeah, so yeah, his whole case is a whole situation. But what I'm basically trying to say is there's like almost like a trade-off of like, you have these like younger girls who have more sexual capital than say like, a 45-year-old, 35-year-old girl in terms of the purely sexual marketplace.
Mhm.
As a man, there's a point in your life where, you're in that mix, and then you should, once you're a 35, 40-year-old dude, you should be emotionally mature enough to like see that girl who's younger and be like, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot, because I know everything that comes along with that. And
Yeah,
I
I know that
honestly,
result.
personally find my wife more attractive who I can actually talk to, talk about stuff that happened and not have her be like, I was 4 when that happened, and be like, well, this is kind of weird. So it's
Right.
like, if you actually like, in terms of like people who are like, mothering your children and all that other stuff, like, that's something I personally, as I get older, find really attractive of like, oh, like, we can have a conversation. We can talk about stuff. We can relate on a certain level that like the 23-year-old, it would just be like, I couldn't, it's just like, you hear
No.
them talk and you're just like, dude, you know, Godspeed on your quest. But like, I have a hard time talking to you because you were literally like 3 years old when I was however old I was, like 16. So it's like,
Right.
there's just a gap there, dude. There's a big life gap that, can only be filled with like me being in a Corvette and be like, hop in, babe. And like, just not having any other relationship than that. So
No, and men are just as much as at fault too, because some of us, like actually, I'd say a lot of us are attracted to that, so we go and pursue that. Like it's just, you said it perfectly. We toggle back and forth. It's like, hey, what do you want? What's the objective? Well, at 10 a.m. I want a wife who's going to be a phenomenal partner. But then you get a couple drinks in me later on at night, and it's like I want the hot. So we need, as men, you have to define what you want, and either one's fine. Either one's fine. But define what you want and then be congruent with it, because otherwise you're just sending mixed messages. Right. So it's this really weird, murky territory, but it's like, if as men, if we take responsibility and say, here's what I actually want, I'm going to pursue this. Right.
mhm.
And I'm going to reward this, like in my pursuit. So, I mean, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about openness of phones? I feel like phones are that's an interesting beast.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the text messages that come up and you kind of tilt the phone a little bit. So it's like, the other person doesn't see it. And if they say something like, what are you talking about? I have my phone right here. It's like, no, but you're kind of tilting it, and then you make the other person feel bad and vice versa. Like, do you think the phones and I don't know, all passwords and everything should just be open? Like, what's your perspective on that?
I'm Elon Musk. I'm open source on this one, dude. It's like all you have, and I make it a point to be like, here's my phone, take it, go through, find my email, dude. Because again, I'm not going to harbor secrets personally, so I'm not going to harbor like email secrets. And I was telling her this the other day. It's like I gave her my phone to do some to look through my email for, I forget what it was. It was something I'd sign up for, and I was like, just find it and fill it out and just let me know. And and I was even telling her, I'm like, it's just so nice because I've spent time in relationships where I had like skeletons in my email inbox that I was like, I don't see that one. No. And it's like, I just don't have any. And it's so much better. And it's just psychologically, it's healthier. And it's like,
Oh, dude.
and it's like, what, again, like even to the stuff that's not like, well, I'm not cheating, but like to be like, maybe I was like on Instagram being like trying to friend models or some pitiful attempt, it's like,
Did you do that?
no, but
Yeah.
it's like, just like dudes will be like, there's guys who are like, dude, I'm not cheating. I'm just like a flirt, dude. Like, oh, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I commented, like, just like going and liking your ex-girlfriend's picture, shit like that.
Yeah,
Like,
that needs to stop. The
don't
whole
do that.
flirting thing, that's not okay.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, man. And it's like, and it just, and again, like you were saying, like, what does it lead to? What is it? Even if it's like, is that really keeping this, this unquenchable sexual desire at bay by like being like, hey, or like nice pic, or, it's like, what, it's harmless.
Right.
I've read, especially on Reddit things, I've read about relationship stuff where guys were just commenting on her pictures and their girlfriend's like, well, stop doing this. And he's like, what, it's harmless. I'm just,
Nope,
I
not
just like,
harmless.
it's
That's
like,
not
dude.
true.
And again, if she did that, you freak out. And that's the other thing
Yep.
too, in terms of women and attention and all that stuff. It's like, why do men cheat? Like you were describing, like you're a woman, you have a male friend, you have a big fight with your husband, you not feel like you're being emotionally validated or listened to. You go with this guy who's just going like, listening, whatever, maybe your friends, I don't know. But but then with the guys, it's like, I think the side of that for men is like, she's not making you feel like, viral, whatever it's called, virile and strong. And, she's not
Right.
respecting you as a man. So you find this like, 23-year-old who's like, wow, you have, a house. And you're like, yeah, I got a house. I share
Yeah.
it with my wife and kids, but whatever. So it's like, Yeah, man. I think that's what happens when dudes fall. They get that like they don't feel manly, and it's like,
Mm.
I'm not impressing my wife anymore. Okay, well, who can I impress? 24-year-old very easily because
Very easily.
I'm a 35-year-old man. It's like I can blow them out of the water because I have 10 years ahead on their peers, and it's kind of like to me, it's kind of a weak thing to do. I get
Yeah.
the temptation. I understand it, fully understand it, but it's like, is that what you're gonna? That's what I always think about too, man. Especially having a family. It's like, dude, like imagine, dude, I've been in a marriage before. I know what it's like to be in a sexless marriage and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Get that. It sucks. It's so bad, but that's your fault. You're doing that. You're
Hmm.
participating. Don't, I'd blame you, blame it on, your wife. Oh, she doesn't want to have sex. It's like, well, maybe why does she not? Is it
Right.
you, or is she just her sex drive declining? You need to have a conversation to dissolve that rather than being a coward and being like, I'm going to have an affair. I think having affairs are cowardly. I think they're super cowardly things to do.
Dude, that's a good statement, man.
You're wreaking havoc, man. And then your kids have to deal with your weird sex shit. It's like, it's just not, you should. The best thing I heard in my family therapy class is emotion is supposed to flow up from kids to parents and never back down. As least as
Wow.
possible, where you don't flow the emotions down. You handle it and say you're going to have a bad discussion. You're like, hey, we have to talk. You get out of here. You have your talk. You try not to have things start to triangulate and kind of go up and down. It's just their emotions are going to flare up on you. Of course, you can't have yours flare up. And that's an ideal. Obviously, people are going to slip, but it's like, it can't become like a chronic pattern where you're like, your kid has to deal with the fact your dad, did all this shit or your mom did. Both of them are horrible things. I think about it all the
Yep.
time. It's like, I know I'm not going to cheat. I'm pretty well controlled with it and I'm pretty good about it, but it's like, I'm at the point too where it's like, I'd rather be the one. My whole life I'd always be like, I'd rather not be the one cheated on. I'd rather be the person cheated on.
Mm.
I'd much rather be the person cheated on because at least I'd know, well, I didn't do this, before. So I've heard people too, like, well, the fact that she might cheat, I'll just cheat just in case she is cheating. Therefore, I'm not losing. And it's like, what? And I used to think, I
Yeah.
understand the thought process. I used to think like that too. But it's like, what are you talking about? All this can be solved with like direct confrontation and conversations around like actually what's going on, you know?
Man, I think you just nailed it. Like you actually just spoke words that have existed in my head before.
Mm,
It's like, hey, well, I'm going to protect myself, and it's like, it's that whole like I'm going to get them before they get me, and we can do it not necessarily in cheating. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can do that. There's a
mhm.
whole bunch of that mindset, that pattern. Oh man, dude, that was phenomenal.
I used to do the same thing of being like, or really my pattern was more like, all in. I'd get kind of disappointed in some area, and then I'd start slipping of just being like, well, let me go check on what this person's doing. I'll go hang
Sure.
out, and then it just turns into like, and you throw alcohol in it. Now all of a sudden you're out of your body in a sense, and it's
Oof.
like, well, I was drunk. It's just pointless. It's like, why would you want to inhabit a lie in a major foundation of your life, which is a
Mm.
relationship? It should be as honest as humanly possible.
Dude, I think you're spot on. Honestly, man, I wish we'd have had this conversation years ago. That's why I think it's so cool we're doing this.
Me too, dude. I wish I
Yeah,
did.
man. People need to hear this stuff. Like I've never heard this stuff growing up. In
Mm-mm.
fact, growing up on the East Coast in Philly, and I'm sure you have similar experience. The outlook that our elder men, and I didn't have a dad around, so I had to, the men that I observed who were fathers, it was basically terrible advice.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it was
dude.
it was it was just awful advice. It was some sort of like marriage sucks. Like, don't do it, kid.
Mhm.
Like that sort of thing. It's like, okay, that might be true, but maybe it's because you go home and you drink 5 beers every night. You turn on the TV. You don't talk to your wife. And there's no dating. There's no romance. There's no nothing. There's no partnership.
Mhm.
Right. And it's like, hey, wife, you just go take care of this and I'll go take it. You're living around each other, not with each other. Maybe that's it. I don't know because I've never lived it, but I can say that now I've got mentors. I've got this one mentor, just amazing. His name's Kevin. We gotta have him on sometime. Like, dude, he every single time when he talks about his wife, he lights up and he's just like, every single day I look forward to going home to my wife. It's like, I could not imagine anything differently. She's the best partner. Like, I'm so blessed. And this guy he's an engineer. He's not an emotional dude, but he gets emotional about this stuff. It's like, that's awesome, man. Like, I want that. And his kids are phenomenal.
Mhm.
He's got a gorgeous home, a gorgeous family, right? But it's like, it's all the stuff is there. And I want that. It is possible. And I now know many people who have that type of relationship. Consequently, a lot of them out here in Southern California. I didn't know too many that had it back in Philly. And not saying obviously, that's just probably just certain sample size,
Mhm.
and dynamics. But I mean, I also agree with you about the phones. I historically was the one that said, no, like, you're not going to have my phone, you're not going to have my password. And my perspective was, yeah, skeletons in the closet. Like, you never know when you're going to get a random text message from a person 3 years ago, right? Which actually, by the way, I think like last year or 2 years ago, that happened. Like, that scenario happened to me where I was in a relationship with a girl, and then literally, actually, funny enough, a woman that you and I both know,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, texted out of the blue who was actually living with somebody else, and like it, and I think you know who I'm talking about. Um, and dark hair,
Mm-hmm.
go
Sure,
absolutely
sure.
gorgeous. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, dude, and that was this was I think it was 2 years ago, and that was a hard one, right? That was a hard, like, send a text, and it's like if somebody else were to read the text, it would, like, I could play it off,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like, what are you talking about? It's not a big deal, but it's like, no, I know what that text meant. Right. I know what that
Yeah.
text meant. And then a week later, I didn't respond. A week later, it followed up with a phone call. And I
Hmm.
know what that phone call meant,
Yep.
and then dumb me picked it up.
Hello.
Right. You know, because that's the thing,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like,
hard, man.
and that's the thing. And I got to call myself out. It's like, no, I'm to blame for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I also know that if I were confronted about it at that time, and this is where maturity has to play a role, and that where we need to help each other and the listeners out, it's like, no, you need to know what you're doing. You know what you know that what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know that if I were confronted on it, what I would have said at the time was like, oh, what are you talking about? It's just a friend.
Yep.
Right. So now future me, right, today is telling, like, past me, it's like, no, you're a liar. You are a
Mm-hmm.
liar. You're just good at debating, and you
Yeah.
easily, crush that person in the argument. It's like, no, you're a liar. You knew that was an unhealthy thing. And what I should have done, and I will do from here on out, is send a text message back. Kind of like the videos they show you in, like, health class, or, like, something back in school. It's like, when a bully comes up, just tell them that, the bigger man walks away, right? Like, something like, you never want to you never want to do that, like, that nerdy response. But
Sure.
honestly, man, like, I think now my rule should be, not I think, I know my rule now will be to send a response back saying, hey, I could be completely wrong. This seems like it might be a flirty type of situation. I'm in a committed relationship right now, and at the expense of looking like an idiot, right, like a nerd, I just got to tell you, like, I can't keep on having conversations with you,
Yeah.
and leave it at that. No, like, hey, if this relationship doesn't work out, then I'll reach back out. Nothing, like, it can't be any more feeder, into, like, future expectations. Like, own the situation. If you're in a committed relationship, acknowledge it and respect it.
Yeah.
And the way that I want to move forward with this is Warren Buffett's rule of, is what you're about to do now. If somebody were if an evil journalist who did not necessarily like you, if they were peeking over your shoulder and looking what you're about to do now, and they were about to write about it in the paper tomorrow, would they have a good argument? And dude, that filter is
Shit,
really
man.
good.
Yeah, it's
Right?
pretty
That
interesting.
filter is really good. So it's like, don't even come close to the lines. Again, if your goal is a long-term, I want a partnership and build on this.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the what I do in that scenario, and it's kind of a celebrated thing. I immediately tell. I go right to Brittany. I say, "Guess who texted me?"
Brittany.
Brittany, guess who texted me? So right away, it's like I go right to the source of where it could
Mm,
potentially lead to a conflict, and you get little bonus points because it always is intriguing for women to know that there's other women who like you, so
mm,
or who could potentially be like checking in with their little telescope on you. So you just
right.
bam I go right to the source and I go, yo, I just want to let you know this person texted me. I don't, I didn't text them back, but check it out. And they usually, it's really kind of funny because then they'll kind of start getting like, who the fuck is this? Like, oh, some person I used to know. And they'll either like, whatever, they're like, thank you for letting me know they like it. And now it's like, you just stoke their little competitive flame. So it's like, it's really a thing to celebrate. If you do get something like that, it's just kind of like, you let them handle it. We had, when I was just in school and I was in like a school where I was like pretty much one of the only dudes in there.
Oh, oh,
So you're just sitting in there and it's like, yeah,
shoo.
so, yeah. So it's like, it's one of those things where you're just sitting there and, I was very proud of myself. I was very good. I was doing stuff. And also too, this might sound like really kind of weird. I was doing like clinical work too. And though the stuff I really worried about was doing clinical work with women where it's like, you have women bearing their souls to you and like, like telling you all their stuff. There's telling like sexual stuff. And like, I was like, I don't know if I could handle doing that. Turns out I'm fine. I actually can. And it's whatever.
Oh, good.
That was something I was very much like kind of aware of that I was like, well, I'm actually kind of fine. Um, But I honestly, I was like, I don't know if I trust myself in that position. And I
Sure.
inhabited the position. I was like, oh, actually, no, I have my values aligned. And it's like, it is a very predatory thing to take advantage of someone in that situation. So I was like happy about that. But anyway, so in school, there was a person who I was kind of looking the other way, but it was a person I found kind of intriguing. And like, I was like, let's all hang out. We all went and hung out, me, her, and some other friends, and Brittany came, and Brittany was just so mean, so mean. But for the reason that she was like, dude, I think that person, I have very solid reason to believe that person's into you. And
Yep.
what the weirdest part was, she knew, because I would just talk about stuff from school, and she knew, she was like, I think that person likes you. Like, just knew from like me saying stuff about class. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Turns out she was absolutely 100% right. And I
Yep.
was just like, man, that's insane. But it's like one of those things where you can rub elbows or bump up in an area where, like, again, I use the word intrigued, where you're just kind of like, that person's occupying, a percentage of your thoughts in a way that you're just kind
Yep.
of like, they're just popping up. And that's, with your thoughts, it's a whole other cool thing of like, in relationships or anything where it's like, so you have the external world, people, places, things that are just kind of like hitting you with stimuli. And then they trigger thoughts inside of you. But what people tend to forget is there's a third part of that, which is you observing your thoughts as well about those things. Where if
Mm.
you're just totally tied up in those thoughts, you have a thought, and you're like, well, I guess I have to act on it because I'm having this thought and I got to do it. But it's like, you can totally just observe a thing and be like, wow, I notice I'm thinking about this person. And
Yep.
then, you can just either tell someone that, or just kind of be like, yeah, but I'm going to let that lie. And it kind of just goes away. It's not one of those things that like needs to be acted on, or like, but you get guys who are a little older, they're 40, and they're like, is this all it will be for me? What could be this other thing? And it's like, what could that other thing be? And it's like, probably pretty much the same as all your other relationships, whatever
Right.
that is. So it's like,
Right.
yeah, so it's pretty crazy, man. It is one of those things where I pride myself on that now, that I'm in a relationship that has no, skeletons in the closet, personal blemishes, personal like buried bodies that I'm kind of like, dude, don't ever go over there. It's like my slate's clean. And I'm like, I'm happy about that. I like to
Right.
keep it that way.
No, man, I completely agree. And we've got to continue. We have to have many parts to this discussion because it's
Yeah.
so, I think what happened, at least for me, is I didn't have good representation of what a father figure should be like, obviously. But then also, I think what's happening a lot now with just in general in society and with marriages especially, is there's a whole cohort of people now that say, I'm just not going to do something because God said so. Right,
Sure.
because I don't believe in the doctrine. These people are saying I don't believe in the doctrine that my parents believed in, and I think these types of discussions need to happen. So, okay, well, if you don't believe in the religious doctrine, right, then let's talk through logical cause and effect, and not talk about stuff in terms of morality or spirituality, but in terms of workability. Like the thing that you're after is what you're doing now, because the goals that are worth it take a long time. So, are the actions that you're taking now, are they in alignment and congruent and workable with the goal that you have in the future? And I think for marriage, like, dude, this has been such an awesome conversation. Like, it's all these little nuances, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about social media? Should your phone be open? Right? What if an old boss sends a Snapchat message? Should you even have Snapchat? Like all of those little things, navigating the little nuances that are very modern today, but we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Right. And let's actually have discussions about them rather than just saying like, oh no, that's not a big deal. Like, oh yeah, it's, I just look at girls on Instagram and Facebook. It's like, dude, come on. Right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you really think that makes your partner like feel good? And do you really think that you're just looking? Or do you think that if things were bad enough, or if one of those girls pinged you back, right, sent you a direct message back and say, hey, let's just go out to lunch. And then you'd say, oh yeah, it's just lunch. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you think that that's more likely, and you're going down a road that's just going to be an absolute disaster?
Yeah.
So, I think, yeah, man, I super appreciate having the conversation. One final thing, and then we can have more parts of this. But it was very interesting. I have a client, and I send him text messages, and then I got a response from his wife, but it's to the same phone number. So they have. I'm convinced that what they have is actually pretty interesting. They have some sort of shared phone system, cell
That's
phones.
hilarious.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
you know, and actually, my first thought was like, oh, well, I wouldn't like that because I don't want Matt sending me a text message that is meant for me,
Mm-hmm.
because it might be some like guys have stupid humor, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's funny. And so it's like, I don't want him him filtering his communication to me because he knows my girlfriend might look at it.
Sure.
But I think I'm coming out of that now and saying, hey, if I could develop some, or it could plug into some sort of like connected, phone system, like almost like the old house phone lines, where if you call, then anybody in the house can pick up, including the wife, including the kids, etc.
Yep.
So, I
actually like that a lot. Yeah.
dude, I think I would do that. I honestly, like when I'm married, I can say for sure that I want that, because I also don't want to take the risk of a skeleton in the closet, like popping up at any given time and then me not see it or something like that, or not pay attention to it. I'd rather have just open, like, hey, if it comes in, there's a possibility it might just from 10 years prior. Then I want you picking up. Right.
Yep.
And then you can send the text message back. Right.
Handle
like whatever.
Handle that. Yeah, dude. And they'll handle it, dude. Trust me. They'll go.
They will handle it.
Oh my
they will
God.
handle it.
I've seen that side come up and they will fucking handle it. And you're just like,
They will
oh,
handle
cool. Yeah, they like it. They like, I think it's, yeah, man. I mean, dude, I could go on all day. It's just, yeah, I think that kind of that's the move, man. And it really is just like, you do it and you just be honest on how it works. And, and I, for both people, it's like, you got to be patient. Like the person is going to disappoint you on some level. And it's like, can you absorb that? It's like, we're all human. We all have, we all have trouble controlling ourselves. We get kind of out of control. A lot of that stuff comes from insecurity of like seeking all that extra attention. So it's like, how much can you actually build that up in the person you're with to like not need that kind of external validation, and I really think it can be done, man. Like I've been in a relationship, my marriage I'm in now, it was super tumultuous, dude. The whole, the beginning of it was wild. Anyone would in the right mind would have been like, that's dude, bad situation. We stuck it out. We did couples counseling, all this stuff. We still argue here and there, but it's like, generally we get along and, things are going well. And it's one of those things too, once you're actually in a relationship and say you're in a functioning, healthy relationship, it's like, the day-to-day reality, which we could probably part two this one, but it's like, this is just a thing I thought of today, where it has to really be like, it can't just be about your schedule or what you want to do. You have to make sure everybody's day is cool and check in. That's why like it all helps when that's what I was saying before, that you win this when you date properly and you unlearn who the person actually is. But as like, say you didn't do that, fine, whatever. It has to be an open communication of like, what do you want to do? What do you want out of the day? What do I want out of the day? How can we both achieve this? What do we have to do? And just it made me laugh thinking like, yeah, it kind of has to be like, you can't be like a totalitarian leader in a relationship. It doesn't work, which is funny to me in terms of like, if you think of, not to get like overtly political, but it's like with communism, it's like, so if I can't like overtly dominate this 3-person thing of like me, my wife and my kid, how is that supposed to work for an entire country where I'm just like, look, I say what goes. This is what we do. Everyone splits this shit. And I obviously get the most. It's like, that's just insane to think that would work for 1 million people if it doesn't work for 3, So I don't know. That was something I thought about today and it's kind of made me giggle. I was like, it's kind of crazy. Because I've thought about exerting totalitarian control over my whole house, and it's just nothing but political dissidents in here. So
I would imagine
I have to. Yeah, so I'm going to set up some fake voting system or something.
What's one major takeaway you got from today's conversation?
The major takeaway would be, well, for me personally, I would say to. Can you do yours? I have to think, actually.
I can tell you immediately. When you said, if you have an affair, you're being a coward.
Yeah.
And dude, that was spot on. Like, man, like I think that is such a powerful message. It's like, hey, as men, we're strong. We've got testosterone. We've got aggression. Use it positively. And step up to the challenge of, if you're having an issue, don't go out and run another direction. And that's what cheating is.
Yeah,
man, I wish I would have got that message when I was a kid. That is such a powerful message. Like, no, you signed up for this thing. As a man, step up and solve it. Don't run away from it.
Me too. And that's kind of for me, it would be more of like the overall takeaway is like trying to give this kind of message to younger people in a way that's not like, at the Bible camp and it's like, your girlfriend's the devil and if you're going to go to hell, it's like, well, no, but it's like this should be a thing. It should be cool. The main takeaway for me is like, making it cool for dudes to see women walking in pasties and just be like, okay,
yeah,
like,
not for me.
Like, yeah, leave that shit alone. And dude, watch it. The shit will follow suit. Women will stop doing it. They'll knock that shit off. If dudes are like, ew, that will stop real quick, dude. Whatever. Which again, maybe sounds patriarchal, but Yeah, man. I just think the main takeaway for me is just like you have to keep things open and honest. And there's just a balance between like being nice and being accepting versus selling yourself short, which again, it's like I could talk about this for another 4 days.
Oh yeah,
Um,
100%.
but yeah,
We got to
that
do
that
more parts to this.
I agree with you too, man. I think that kind of is a takeaway of just like, you know, just trying to keep all of the just, moving forward. It's like just assess where you're at and just, again, just try to because the way I think about it all the time, my takeaways are more about like how to approach this before you're in a relationship. I'm in a relationship. So it's
Mhm.
like now I'm doing the work of like basically more of like the emotional chiropractic work of like trying to like align the spine of like, it's here, the spine's built. So it's like, let's
Yeah.
try to figure this out. So yeah, my brain's too scrambled on this to have any
No,
one.
I mean, it was phenomenal. I'm going to give the guys homework this time. So the homework is, if you have not defined what you want either in your current relationship or what you want for a future relationship, define that. Do you want the hot, flinging, lustful type of relationship? And that's fine. No judgment, right? Like if that's your goal, go do it, but define it and then pursue that thing. Or do you want the partnership? Do you want the foundation? Do you want the building? Define what you want and then focus only on finding that.
Mhm.
Period. If you go over and jump over to the other side and that's not your real objective, you're going to run into major, major, major problems. Mark my words, Matt and I both have a lot of experience in that area. Trust me, define what you want and pursue that and put blinders on to everything else.
Yeah. And what I would say too, what I would add to that is try to also see it, see if how much if it's possible to get kind of a little bit of both of that and in a more overtly like kind of supportive generative setting. And then, see if you can fling that up or spice that up a little bit,
What do you mean?
like, sometimes it's not even just an either or. It's like, you can have aspect, like you could have a wife or a girlfriend that, you guys are pretty much handling business as usual. If you feel like that's lacking, is like give yourselves a night and go out and go have a crazy night. Go save up money, take a weekend trip and, go get drunk and run around a beach and just be psychos for a night. Like you can do that. It is kind of fun. It's just,
Oh, definitely. No, 100%.
that's the only time I drink anymore. It's just I save it for like if I'm on a vacation, if I'm doing something like that. Like that's one thing I think alcohol is actually beneficial for, of like a boring, stolted marriage. And it's like, well, get a babysitter. If you don't have kids, just like you feel like you're in that place just before you break things off, just like go take a weekend together and just act like kids and mess around and see what happens. You might be like, oh yeah, I actually like you. I forgot. Like I
Oh,
forgot.
yeah.
So
100%. Yeah, definitely. I didn't mean to give that message. What I was saying is like,
you're right though. You are right though. Yeah. Pick
yeah.
one, man. You can't have both. That's the one thing too. If yeah, exactly. Like this is why this shit is so complex is you are right. Cause it's like, if you're going towards one, which is like, again, I'm obviously biased. I think it's better to have that like generative, nurturing, multi-dimensional relationship versus like, pulling up and be like, hop in, babe. Like, I'm the dude at the club who gets in, whatever that shit from movies is. But yeah, like they are mutually exclusive things, but it's like there are good elements to that excitement. Like how much of that can you bring in,
Mhm.
without, having it just destroy your whole house or whatever.
Oh
So
yeah, well put it this way. Much rather have the woman who is going to be a phenomenal partner and yeah, every once in a while we can go and get dressed up and she can look sexy and we can go out dancing and all that stuff than the other way around.
sure. Yes.
Right? Someone who's primarily the sexy one that like very rarely plays the partnership role that like that. Like so yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a hybrid, but you want ninety
Sure.
10. Well,
Yes.
whatever
Yeah,
you
yeah,
pick, right? Like you got to
yeah.
pick your 90-10.
There
Right?
you
So
go.
so that for sure, and just be congruent with it. Pick your 90-10 either side and be congruent with it.
Yep. That perfect. That's my takeaway. You just said it. I couldn't figure out
Awesome.
how to put that. So that's perfect. You're 90-10.
Awesome.
I love it.
All right, brother.
All right,
Till
dude.
next week, man.
Definitely, dude.
All right, later, buddy.
Later on.